Hello, my friends, hello, and welcome once again to Stately Von Manor. And it's my Read Every Book by Stephen King project. I'm reading every book by Stephen King, and I'm supposed to be doing it in publication order. Only I screwed up this time. So I was reading Lonesome Dove, and I set Lonesome Dove down because I finished that book. And I immediately picked up this book, Christine, by Stephen King, because I thought this was the next book on the list for Stephen King, but it wasn't. It was Different Seasons. So I should have picked up Different Seasons. And then after Different Seasons was Creepshow. So I skipped ahead 2 books to Christine, but I picked this up without realizing that and read 50 pages. And once you read 50 pages of this book, you're just going to keep reading the book. So I'm going to have to go back to those other 2 books. But for now, let's talk about Christine, because I really enjoyed this book. Stephen King's Christine, the story of a killer car. It makes sense that a car would be the monster. Cars are incredibly dangerous. So the idea of an evil car that can kill on its own, can drive on its own, run around and kill folks, it's, can be a scary idea if it's done right. And it's done really well in this book, actually. Christine from 1983. So this is the story of nerdy Arnie and his pal Dennis. And Arnie is a nerdy high school kid, 17-year-old nerdy high school kid who, he's always picked on. He's a school nerd. But luckily for him, his best friend is Dennis, and Dennis is a jock. So Dennis keeps Arnie from getting completely murdered in high school. And Dennis is driving Arnie along down the road, and they drive by this beat-up old 1958 Plymouth Fury that is on a lawn. And Arnie's like, stop, stop! That car was for sale, and Arnie becomes completely obsessed with his beat-up old junky car, which is owned by an old guy named Roland D. LeBay. And Arnie buys the car off of LeBay, not knowing the sinister backstory of this car. So this car is just a piece of crap at this point. But Arnie has decided that he is going to restore this car to its former glory. LeBay had named this car Christine. He named the car. And Arnie immediately just refers to the car as Christine from that point on. Now, everybody in this book, except for Arnie, who encounters this car, is creeped out by it. There's something wrong with this car. There's something creepy about it. But Arnie is obsessed. Arnie's in love with this car. And so he's decided he's going to restore this car. He does have some automotive ability, so. Still, his success in restoring this car is unusual and suspicious. I mean, he makes it perfect. And the way he goes about it is odd, as Dennis notices. So Dennis is thinking something's suspicious about this. In the meantime, Ronald D. LeBay dies. He passes away. And at the funeral, Arnie and Dennis decide to go to LeBay's funeral for some reason. Dennis runs into LeBay's brother, who gives him all kinds of information and background on LeBay and Christine. And it's all bad. LeBay apparently was a terrible, terrible human being, filled with rage and fury. He was always angry, this guy. I kind of suspect that Stephen King chose a 1958 Plymouth Fury partially because of the name, Fury. Also because it's a really cool car. It is a pretty cool car. And so Arnie, as he's working on this car and throughout the book, starts taking on some pretty obvious character traits of LeBay. He starts becoming more and more like that creepy LeBay guy who was just awful. Dennis is very concerned. Everybody's very concerned. And of course, there are bullies in this book, because it's Stephen King. And Arnie runs afoul of them. And of course, this is about a car a car that takes on a life of its own, or has a life of its own, and is an unstoppable monster, basically. And so I will leave it at that. Probably you know all about this story anyway, because you've probably seen the movie. The movie I remember being pretty good, although it's been a long time since I've seen it. Made the same year that this book came out, actually. But there are a couple things about this book I want to mention real quick. So this is not Stephen King's best book. It's not his worst book. I think it's probably floating around in the middle somewhere. As far as the Stephen Kings that I've read so far for this project, there are a lot of good things about this. The plot is really, really, really simple. It's a pretty simple plot. It is a creature feature. That is what this book is. It's a story about a supernatural monster, basically. And that aspect of this story is done really well. It's a creature feature, but it's a really well done creature feature. The characters actually are also really well drawn characters for the most part. Dennis is a realistic character, Arnie's friend Dennis, who's telling the story, basically. It's a first-person narrative until you get to the middle, and then it switches over, and then it switches back. But you find out that basically Dennis is telling the whole story. He just uses an odd narrative technique in the middle. But it's okay. It works well enough. But Dennis is like a realistic teenager. All his feelings seem real. He really cares for his friend Arnie. And the friendship is actually pretty well done. Arnie is a good character. Also, it's interesting to see Arnie change and become more and more like the evil LeBay. It's very obvious the way it's done, but that's okay. It's done well enough. This does have a lot of Stephen King tropey stuff in it. Like I said, you've got the main bully in here. The main bully in this story could be the main bully from any Stephen King novel. It's like the same guy. It's like the main bully in Carrie just walked out of that book and walked into this one. It's the same character, basically. It has the bitchy mom, the awful bitchy mom. Arnie's mom is kind of awful and bitchy. Although, at least you get some of her motivation and why she's that way. And she's not just an awful, terrible mom. You can at least understand why she is the way she is. And so the work with the characters is actually pretty well done for the most part, with the exception of the bully and the girlfriend, Lay. Now, Lay is this beautiful, beautiful girl who, in the course of this story, falls in love with Arnie. Why? Who knows? So Lay is the most beautiful girl in the high school. And that's pretty much it. That's the thing. She's nice. She's a nice, beautiful girl who loves Arnie. Why she loves Arnie, who knows? You never get an idea why she's attracted to Arnie. She just is. And she is not a very well-drawn character at all. She's just kind of there to be the beautiful girlfriend who's nice, So there is that. But the best thing about this book, and the reason to read this book, is because the monster is done so well. Christine is a great character. Now, you're left wondering in this story if LeBay's ghost is what's causing Christine to be an animate, supernatural monster, if it's all LeBay, or if Christine's inherent evil changed LeBay and made LeBay into kind of a supernatural ghost that could come back and haunt Arnie and become Arnie. A lot of that stuff is kind of left up in the air for you to decide, I suppose. I get the feeling LeBay was just so evil and awful that his evil made Christine kind of an animated monster. His evil gave Christine life. I get that feeling. I remember it being a little different in the movie. I think in the movie, from what I remember, Christine was pretty much evil from the assembly line. But it's a little different in the book. But really well done. And Christine is really an unstoppable monster. And if she gets damaged, the damage is just immediately reversed. Because her odometer moves in reverse, moves backwards. And so she's constantly going back in time and regenerating herself as she goes around slaughtering folks. And those parts are great, by the way. The Christine killing people scenes are fantastic. Really well done stuff. And unlike a lot of Stephen King books, this has a great ending. Has a really good monster movie kind of ending. And the last little bit of this book is really well done. This ends on a high note. It's really good. So I was very well satisfied with this. It's a basic creature feature book with a very simple plot, but a really well done one, and it's very entertaining. So yeah, I recommend Christine. This book's a lot of fun. Okay, guys, I guess I've said enough about this fantastic book. I will catch you next time. All right, little Stephen King, that was awesome. I liked Christine. I thought that was a pretty good one. So good job, pal.